Hello and welcome to another episode of the CG Garage. This is episode number 433, featuring Joshua Lastine, who is the founder of Lastine Entertainment Law. Yes, he is a lawyer. It's actually Joshua Lastine Esquire because of his lawyer status. It's really cool to have him on. We got this based on a suggestion from someone, which I think is great. Loved having him on. And we talked a lot about what an entertainment lawyer does. Obviously, there's a lot of things that are going on into making feature films and music and TV shows, and lawyers are very much necessary to make that happen. So it was really kind of interesting to see what he had to say about that. I was very curious in terms of all the legal ramification, especially things with the strikes that are happening, and of course AI technology that's going on, how that's affecting everyone's work and what that means for the entertainment industry. And it was very interesting to have his take on that particular subject. So really cool to have it. I highly recommend, if you guys like this episode, to go back and listen to last week's episodes as well, which was episode number 432 with Mark Simonetti. He had some very interesting thoughts about AI and how it affects his work, as well as episode number 411 with Meets Myers, who also has some very deep thoughts on how AI has contributed to his work. So really cool to sort of see where those things land. And I really thought it was a lot of fun to have Joshua on to add his take on that particular subject. Of course, if you guys have more ideas or questions or anything else you want to add to the subject, or suggestions of other people who would like to have on, please let us know. labs@chaos.com is the best way to reach us, and I would look forward to hearing your suggestions. All right, we've got a couple of announcements. You can go to chaos.com for this. First one is V-Ray for Houdini 6 Update 1 is out. There's a bunch of new features in there. There's a bump to glossiness feature, which is basically balances the normals and the glossiness map effect together. This is highly effective on things like skin, which makes it much smoother specular highlights. Also, there's going to be lots of new features that are added to the light decay. So go check those out in light decay. There's enhanced procedural clouds that's been added. A bunch of work on Solaris, including USDs and faster time to first pixel, which is really cool. We've added a new NVIDIA denoiser and upscaler that's been in there as well. And we've also done some big enhancements on V-Ray GPU in terms of the amount of memory loaded for textures, a lot more compression done in textures, memory consumption on GPUs, which is really cool as well. All right, again, you can find all of this out at chaos.com. In terms of events, you go to chaos.com/events. We've got one event coming up this month. We will be in Australia, which is very exciting. We will be in Melbourne on July 13th, and we will be in Sydney on July 18th. And this will be brought to you by Digitor and Storm Effects. So we're very excited. And we'll be doing a deep dive into the ArcViz landscape. So again, you can check all of this out and register at chaos.com/events. Now, if you guys want to know more about the podcast, of course, you can just go to our podcast page, which is chaos.com/CG Garage. If you'd like to watch us, you can always go to youtube.com/Chaos Group TV. And of course, you can go to our Facebook page, which is facebook.com/CG Garage Podcast. Once again, if you have suggestions, don't forget to email us labs@chaos.com. But for now, please enjoy episode number 433 with Joshua Lastine.
Welcome to another CG Garage, where the Chaos Group talks. You'll know it's over when the last bucket drops. We're gonna fire off rays in high dynamic range. We know that ambient occlusion is passé. Global illumination won't lead you astray. And while image-based lighting is really swell, you need to make sure everything has Fresnel.
All right. Well, thank you, Joshua, for doing this. I appreciate it. Like I was saying, it's kind of nice to have a lawyer to be able to talk to. Usually it costs me about $500 an hour to talk to a lawyer. So I appreciate this. And it'd be really great to give people a little bit of a rundown of some of the things that you do. So as you know, I think you know that this podcast is mainly about technology and about technology that has been used in the entertainment industry. And it's been going on for a while. And obviously technology is a big part of what I want to talk to you about, specifically in the legal side of things. But I'm curious if you can give people who may not know what an entertainment lawyer does, and how you got to be that person, and why that became an interesting thing to career path for you.
Yeah. So like you said, Joshua Lastine of Lastine Entertainment Law. We've been in business now for 3 years. We started our own firm in 2021. We handle a lot of different deals, whether that's talent deals, negotiating for actors, writers, directors, producers to show up and be on set, on camera, and film. We also help out with day-to-day development and production legal matters. So we help the guys that are the boots on the ground, the UPMs, the line producers, in their day-to-day capacity in securing, locations, equipment rentals, transportations, visual effects. I do a lot of vendor service agreements with visual effects companies, drones. We do a lot of drones and camera rental agreements. So basically the day-to-day paperwork that's required to get the physical content captured, and to eventually put it on screen. So the minute that they say green light go, we are kind of on the ground with the production and help facilitate and manage at least the legal and business operation side of the production. So if creative says, hey, we need to bring in an airplane and explode an airplane on Thursday, my guys on the ground say, I got 5 guys that have airplanes to get us here by Wednesday. They take that bid to finance and myself. We look over it and we look at the vendor that we want to approve, and then we go out and try to make that deal and negotiate with the vendor, the visual effects company, the props company, transportations, locations, you name it. So it's a lot of deal making. It's a lot of trying to find compromise between parties who are more or less on the same side, at least on the side of wanting to create good product, wanting to make cool film, television, short form digital, music videos, whatever it is, but kind of coalescing or crowding those groups together between the creative side, the physical side, the finance, legal side, to make sure that Curly, Larry, and Moe, the Three Stooges, are all aligned, clump their heads together, and let's get that final product on screen. So I graduated law school in 2014. I came to Hollywood in 2011. I'm from bumfuck nowhere, born and raised, town of, sorry, not sure if I can say that.
You can say that, it's fine.
500 people in the middle of Iowa. I was Luke Skywalker on Tatooine. I always knew I wanted to hop in my X-Wing and kind of fly away. And it was really, that initial kind of introduction to storytelling, movies like Star Wars, Aliens, E.T., etc., where I started to see that there's really this kind of amazing intersection between like just turning on the TV and seeing the content as it lives, and the white collar guys that are in the suits and the towers in Hollywood negotiating deals, the blue collar guys on the ground that are getting creative and are just fantastic about finding new and practical ways to make an image work or create a visual asset or a VFX piece. And I just thought that the blending of all of those businesses was so cool, that I had to come out in Hollywood and be a part of it. So like I said, I moved to Hollywood in 2011. I got my first job interning for American Idol, doing music licensing. I interned at Marvel Studios while I was in law school. I actually got to work on the VFX asset creation deal for the Hulkbuster armor that appeared in Avengers Age of Ultron, the second Avengers film. I was outside counsel for a period of time at a separate law firm to Amazon Studios, and I was kind of the day-to-day show attorney, show wrangler for shows like Man in the High Castle, which had a very heavy VFX and practical effects component, a lot of stunt works. I worked on the movie Midway, Roland Emmerich's Metropolis film in 2019. He's known for the big explosions and blockbuster, spectacle style films. So we did a lot of visual and practical effects for that. And then in 2021, I started a TV show, started supervising production legal on a TV show called Echo 3, which just came out for Apple Plus. It's kind of a military-esque show starring Luke Evans, set in Colombia, based on the Israeli TV series When Heroes Fly. So that one was really cool because we were a lot of my job was helping to transport and move fake guns, props, military equipment, drones, airplane parts, etc., from the United States to Colombia, getting them through customs, and getting them to set to be filmed and then shipped back to the United States. So that's kind of me and my job in a nutshell. Lots of deal making. Not one day is ever typical. All of my clients are different, but I would say all of my clients are in the business of making cool stuff.
That's amazing. Honestly speaking, it's just kind of flabbergasting to hear all the things you do. I know that, but it is, you think of a lawyer just, well, I'm just making contracts, but you're actually having to figure out how to get stuff done. It sounds almost producer-like and line producer-like in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I get that question a lot if I serve as a producer, and I would say that it's just my job to help the producers get their job done, whether that's the creative producers and in terms of hiring writers, acquiring screenplays or content for adaptation, IP for adaptation, whatever it is, helping the creative side get their legal ducks in a row, but then also on the physical side, there's just so much that goes into getting that final product on screen. And, when I started working in this business, television, TV show budgets were semi-modest, right? Like Mad Men was kind of like the big thing at the time, and Breaking Bad and Nashville on ABC.
Right.
But we're not talking the hundreds of $1 million budgets that TV shows like The Mandalorian or Lord of the Rings have now.
Right.
It's a completely different game than what it was. And a lot of times that because of the increased price points, there's just so much that goes into it. Like a Star Wars show or a Marvel show probably has so many added layers of security that would be another component that I would have to deal with on my side to making sure that everyone's following and cooperating with security guidelines and security restrictions, and that we're hiring, Paul Blart mall cops to police the area and stuff like that. So yeah, it can be, I've worked on $20,000 YouTube videos for hair, makeup, and outfits and the like. And I've worked on, $100 million blockbuster films, all of which require different tools of the trade to just, like I said, we're all on the side of let's get the thing done and let's get something made and let's put cool product out to the consumer.
That's awesome. That's really awesome. And it's really cool to hear that. And I think, a lot of people need to think about that. If they, there's a lot of people, as you know, who are like, I want to make a short, or I want to do this, or I have a low budget film that I need to do. And they need to start thinking about how it's going to get done legally, and having someone out there that can help them out and not have to worry about it is actually really interesting as well. Yeah, I have obviously, as you know, there's a lot of technology that I want to talk about. And right now there's a lot of questions about how technology is going to change Hollywood. And I have a few things I'm interested in. Is first of all, obviously right now there's a bit of a turmoil in Hollywood, and something that I think you as a lawyer may have some strong ideas or opinions. How do you put yourself? How do you define exactly what's happening right now with the strike, especially the writer's strike, and potentially the directors and actors strike as well? How do you feel that's what motivated that, and how did technology affect that decision to go on strike?
Yeah, I'm really a student of history, and I like looking towards the past for examples, and hopefully try to see where that might take us in the future. If you look back to the original 2008 writer's strike, which is actually when I went to college and decided that I wanted to get onto this career path of entertainment, a lot of it was kind of initiated by the advent of streaming. The transfer from physical assets, Blu-rays, VHS, regular movie ticket sales, right? In the theater, where eyeballs were now being driven to the streaming platforms. And I don't think anyone anticipated that they would be as successful as they were, back in 2007, 2008, and then through the proliferation of, 2012, 2013, 2014. So the 2008 writer's strike was really kind of, instrumental in seeing the writing on the wall and seeing where the industry was going with the streaming. And they were able to kind of garner good protections, but even the protections and the concessions that they made in the 2008 writer's strike was not enough to really see how much money Hollywood would be making off the streaming. I think I heard a report or a figure, and don't quote me on this because I don't remember the figures exactly, but like the net worth of Hollywood was around like 5 to 10 billion in the early 2000s, and now like the total generated wealth is around like 40 billion. Or something like that. So it's exponentially increased with the advent of streamers. More people are consuming content than ever before. When I started working, there was like 400 new original TV shows, scripted original TV shows that would come out on a given year. Now it's something like 900. And this entry into the market and this kind of saturation of content has really done a number in terms of widening the gap between those who started out at this game, in the 70s or 80s and have been playing in this town for years and years and years, and those who are just, kind of starting out. And so, you'll have someone like Sydney Sweeney, who's extremely popular, one of the most it girls there is right now, and she's been on record and talk about the pay discrepancies in Hollywood, because when you're starting out as an actor now, you may be making $20,000 to $30,000 an episode, which sounds like a lot, right? But it used to be 24 episode orders. Then it was 12 episode orders. Now it's 10, sometimes 6 episode orders. And then the guys at the top, they're making, $1 million an episode, $5 million an episode, or something like that. And so the pay discrepancies are starting to become so outrageous, where the guys at the tippy top are making so much and the budgets are becoming so inflated, but everyone that's kind of married to the success of the project on the ground, we haven't really seen substantial pay increases. In my 10 years in working in Hollywood, right, I moved out here in 2011. It's been constantly a battle between the little guy and the ever widening gap for the elite 1%, I guess. So I think that is really something, this looking at streaming and now looking towards how disruptive AI is, how disruptive, the advancements in streaming are, podcasts, sound quality, all of these things are changing the medium of storytelling, right? Like how we consume, but it just means that there are more eyes and ears consuming content, and the people want to partake in the rewards of that success. It wasn't a thing, you maybe had David Hasselhoff having Knight Rider showed off in Germany, but now, the success of Stranger Things is completely worldwide, and the writers who write on those shows should partake in the success, not only because it's fair and equitable, but because if we want to, train the next crop of A-list talent, they have to kind of go through that evolution process. For writers in particular, there's kind of been this stagnation of their position within the industry. They work on one show. Those shows used to go 5, 6 seasons. Now they go one season and they're starting back at square one in another writer's room, but they haven't advanced at all in their placement. So if we as consumers want to see better content, we want better writing, we want more equitable treatment in terms of employment in Hollywood, we kind of have to stand and support the unions in their effort to try to make things a little bit more fair and balanced.
Yeah, but there's also, obviously there's been a disruption to the whole business plan as well, right? We used to deal with syndication, where a show would go on and then after it was done, they would syndicate it to other shows. And then, every time you watch a rerun of Seinfeld, someone's getting paid, right? And that's not the case with streaming, right? You just get paid once and then they quote unquote own the property and they can just keep airing it for as long as they want. They don't have to pay it out. Is that true?
Yeah, more or less that's true. And I think it's really kind of gotten people savvy in terms of understanding and knowing their intellectual property rights. Right. And, it is such a thing that in Hollywood that kind of the proverbial goal of the studios is to just own content, own IP outright. But what we've seen in the last couple of years is those who have maintained ownership of their own IP, they found creative ways to monetize it and become wildly more successful than having sold it to a proper, Netflix or Amazon or whatever. I'm thinking of, the name's escaping me now, but the guy who made Ridiculousness. I know that he just did a substantial deal to license and relicense off all of those episodes for, more or less syndication, and he retained ownership rights of those IPs. So it's getting people to be more understanding of how their intellectual property is being captured and owned. And as we've seen, or as I'm starting to see with like the influencers, the streamers, the YouTube creators, and the podcast content creators, they are keeping more ownership of their IP. It's really, the large tentpole IP franchises and stuff that are being gobbled up by the studios. But even still, if you look at something like a Skybound Entertainment, Rick Kirkman, inventor of Walking Dead, he maintains heavily ownership of that company and has good say and direction of where it goes. So it's one of those things where I feel like the industry is in turmoil, but we'll see things kind of cool and settle down over the next 5 years. And as we figure out, what is entertainment in a world of TikTok? What is entertainment in a world of AR, VR? What is entertainment in a post-pandemic world now where maybe we don't want to be glued to our devices as much? And then, as AI comes in and kind of also, once again, reshapes and reinvents things.
Yeah, I do. And boy, there's a lot to talk about. This is amazing. Hopefully we can get through all of it. I do want to get to AI, obviously, as part of, a company that develops a lot of technology and has been working on figuring out how we can start to utilize AI for the best of what's going on. First of all, what are your thoughts about AI as a general thing? And then how do you feel it's going to change the entertainment industry, and how do you think we need to consider certain aspects of it?
A great question. I can kind of think of AI like I think of global warming. It's not something that I'm happy about, or it's something that I would like to see change. But as a practical matter, I don't know what we can do to stop the train on its tracks as it's moving. I actually think maybe even global warming might be more manageable to stop than potentially AI. The proverbial genie is out of the bag, so to speak, and we need to find a way to come to terms with that, adapt to that, and evolve with that as a society. As scary as that is, as scary as that sounds, we have to find a way to wrap our heads around it and get kind of copacetic, karmatic with it as soon as we can, because it's happening fast. And it is going to change how humans live indefinitely in the same way that the light bulb and the internet did.
Yeah, well, that's true. I have been exploring massive amounts of scope and areas and different things. I think the biggest thing that I think people can do to help them with their fear of AI is just to learn a lot more about it.
Yeah. Sit down and play with it. I teach at Los Angeles Film School. I teach to undergraduate filmmakers and entertainment entrepreneurs, and I'm probably the crazier professor on campus because I do encourage students to spend some time to learn and figure out and how to use AI, because it's going to be, utilized in every classroom, 5 years down the road. And then, in some of the things that we can talk about later, but there are pros to it, right? Like it wouldn't be here, it wouldn't be a thing if there wasn't some useful benefits to it. It's not, I guess my message isn't that it isn't all gloom and doom, but it is something, that is going to kick us in the face in a way that I don't know that humanity is prepared for.
Okay. I do want to know a little bit about your thoughts on, obviously AI has been a subject of the negotiations, especially for the writers. Obviously, people are upset about ChatGPT doing writing. I don't think ChatGPT or any of the other large language models are going away. I think there's going to be many, many, many of them. I think they are going to be used in interesting and different ways. I'm not exactly sure how that is, but forcing people to not use a tool that is inevitable seems a little bit challenging. I'll give you an example that I had a discussion with a friend of mine. Back in the 60s, I guess, there was a painters union, and they were trying to start a law or make it so the union not to use rollers because it was going to make painting too fast and they weren't going to be paid as much. So what are your thoughts about how, people are concerned about using large language models for writing purposes and how that's going to affect their job in writing.
Yeah, I really like that paint roller analogy. I would say using ChatGPT and using the AI language models, it is going to be a long time before any of them can actually replace a intelligent screenplay writer for dramatic film, feature film, or television.
Sure.
That being said, I think that it's absolutely a great tool, resource, and or instrument that writers can use to enhance their writing, to do quick research, to do quick summaries, to study data analytics, to figure out where the audience are, things of that nature that will enhance the overall screenwriting process. The problem is that those tools will be very good and useful and successful to already established writers, people who already know and understand their craft. Right. My general fear is that the youth, the younger generation will rely too much on the technology, and fundamentals of good storytelling and good writing in general may go out the window because we've found a way to kind of fast track things. Right. If that makes sense. And so while the WGA, they're trying to see some sort of limitations or strikes or preventions of using AI within, Hollywood and the writer system, I think more likely than not, it will be such a thing where it's like, okay, you can't replace a writer with AI. Because I could see a lot of low-level writing positions, a lot of staff writers and baby writer positions going out the window because AI can do a lot of that work in terms of initially summarizing ideas, script summaries, collecting data and information and suggesting things, working I use it as a thesaurus a lot. Sometimes I'll use ChatGPT and I'll say, hey, give me a word that sounds like this, means this and that, and I'll just see what it can come up with to just try to brainstorm ideas. But that's because I already know that there's something out there that exists that I can find, rather than relying on that to be my primary, brain.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've had this argument as well as, talking about specifically text to image models such as Midjourney or whatever. A lot of the best art that I've seen created in those tools are from established artists.
From established artists,
right?
People that know their craft already.
They know how to do something. Yeah.
So for me, my problem is that there's such a widening gap between those at the top and those just starting out already. I don't want to see that gap being widened anymore, because we have kind of gotten into this place where it's like, I'll say this speaking as a teacher, it is hard to train the youth in 2023. It is hard to capture people's attention with the pandemics and the wars and the internet and the AIs and all that stuff. So one more distraction when writing is already a craft that I see kind of going by the wayside in terms of liberal art studies and stuff. It's not as hands-on as a plumber or electrician or a coder. So it's not necessarily the what they're training the future youth to go after. But we're still always going to need bards. As a wordsmith myself, we're always going to need bards.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I saw an article the other day about a sci-fi writer who wrote 97 books in 6 months using ChatGPT and Midjourney. And I'm thinking, it's like, that's crazy, right? And then first time I was like, but ChatGPT didn't get 97 ideas. No, that is a very creative person that came up with 97 ideas. And I don't know if they're any good or not, but it's amazing.
And that's probably the first point that I want to make about AI in general. In terms, I got on here with some points to talk about the pros and cons of AI and whatever, because a lot of people are so focused on the negative side. I really think that, looking at the positives, the democracy of ideas is really the biggest part of this, right? As a busy lawyer, professional, husband, teacher, I don't have all the time in the world to flex my creative muscles the way that I would like to as an aspiring artist. Sure. I don't have time to do the research and learn video editing skills and learn how to create, visual assets by hand. But now with all of the AI out there, I can start to flex my creative muscles a little bit more.
Sure.
and create content for myself. And I'm speaking in, me or anyone who has a 9 to 5, right? It's just kind of made creativity more democratic.
Yes. Okay. Well, that's a very nice way of putting it. But let's talk a little bit about, now we're going to go into the more, some other ethical issues about it. Let's talk about the copyright of the material and how those materials were sourced. What is, from a legal perspective, I don't know how much you're connected to the copyright laws of things, but I'd still be curious to know, like, these things are sourced from other materials. And some claim that these were sourced without people's permission. Although putting stuff on the internet, you've already given up some kind of permission of what you wanted to show. So, but what are your thoughts on the copyright of this? And if someone submits a script idea or concept art that was using AI, can they maintain the ownership of that IP once that has been used?
Yeah, so there are some pending lawsuits right now, especially I think as it relates to companies like Getty Images and Stock Photo and iPhoto and stuff that have brought lawsuits because, like you said, in purposes of just plain and white and black copyright law, what they're doing is taking someone else's image and repurposing and using it and making it as part of their own. So there is some truth in saying that there is a per se copyright violation, and you don't just automatically give up your copyright rights the moment you post something online. That's not exactly how it works either.
Sure.
However, I kind of think of it back to, remember those photo mosaic things in the 90s that were really popular where you had like Yoda and as a quote, but like if you looked at it really, really closely, it was like a million images of like the beach or a forest or something.
Yes,
and it
yes,
made
of
up
course.
the entire image of Yoda. That to me is more or less what the AI algorithms are doing. They are sourcing thousands, if not millions, of potential images and amalgamating them in a way that I think, at least in my opinion, is relatively transformative. The two aspects of making a secondary creative work is it a derivative of that work? Is it a slight variation thereof, in which terms it would be a copyright violation? Or is it transformative? Is it changing the work so much that it in no way kind of capitalizes on the monetary value of the original work itself, or maybe not even the monetary value, but the creative value, the creativiness of the work itself? Are you capitalizing? Are you monetizing or monopolizing that? And if you're not, it's done in such a way that it's so transformative, it doesn't necessarily fall under copyright infringement. So something like a picture of the San Francisco Bridge. If I take a picture of the San Francisco Bridge, I may own a copyright of that image. My copyright only extends to the uniqueness in which that I've taken the image of the San Francisco Bridge. Anyone else can go out there and take their own picture of the San Francisco Bridge, and it may look slightly similar to mine, but unless it's a one-for-one recreation of what I did and it follows whatever my artistic taste and nature was, they have a really hard chance of bringing a copyright infringement argument. That's what I see here. I see these stock image companies that have ownership of like millions and millions of image. They may have copyright protection of those specific image, but the creativity of the images, baby laughing. Minimal, such that the protection should really only lie into that image of the baby, and or if it's a famous baby or like the person, whatever, more so than just stock image of baby.
Interesting. Interesting. There's a lawsuit, and I'm hoping you can clarify what's going on with the Warhol Foundation. Have you heard of this one?
Oh goodness.
Okay, break that one down for me.
No, I wish I could. I actually just had my law firm write a memo about this last week, and it's sitting in my inbox.
Okay, so maybe I won't bring it up.
Yeah, so ask me next time.
Okay, all right. But yeah, it's just an interesting thing because it's about Warhol. Warhol took a photograph that someone did and adapted it to create his own thing. And now the Warhol Foundation is being sued by the photographer, which may have repercussions on how images are sourced and
Yeah,
how they're used, right?
yeah, yeah. I got to go back and read the final decision.
Okay, okay, but there's also sort of, for example, like someone who tried to create created a comic book and used used the Midjourney for all the images, and then there was someone saying you can't necessarily use those. They can't be copyrighted because they were done with AI. But that's not how they phrased it. They said you can't do it because you used a machine to do it. And they
Yeah,
used the analogy of the monkey taking a picture of a non-human. That's what it was.
I was just gonna say it's the monkey taking a photograph case.
Right.
I can't remember exactly when the case happened, but there was the copyright infringement case where a photographer was suing, and his monkey had originally taken the snapshot of the image, and the court found that because the monkey was the one that hit click on the camera, the guy who owned the monkey owned the camera, didn't essentially own the copyright to that image. It's similar in that there isn't going to be outright copyright protection for the straight image that an AI generator creates. But the second you take that image off of the website and start modifying and adding to it and start redoing it yourself, it's going to be very hard for the court to say that you're not going to have copyright protection in the secondary derivative aspect of taking that work off and finding a way to make it your own. I don't know how much you have to do to make it your own. To me,
Right.
it should be just as simple as just putting your watermark on it or putting your signature on it. And when you frame that into an original work of authorship, you're the copyright owner.
Yeah, it's interesting you're saying that. It's interesting you say that because obviously there's a lot of people that fear this has been, as someone who works in the creative field and deals with a lot of artists, especially visual effects artists and even matte painters and concept artists and stuff. This is one of the most divisive thing that we have encountered. I mean, some people are so strongly opinionated in either direction. Mainly the people are very strongly opinionated in the this is not art, this is stealing, et cetera, et cetera. And then there's everyone else like, but I'm liking so much great stuff. How can you take that away from me? So it's kind of an interesting thing.
Yeah, and it's interesting because copyright law in this country has evolved significantly over time, and it was really even the 1990s Mickey Mouse case that extended copyright law to kind of the level where it is today, and to, in our minds, this sort of fundamental right of ownership of intangible property, intangible work. If you think back to the 15th, 16th, 17th century, they didn't have a whole lot of intellectual property law. What you created as intellectual property belonged to the king or the church.
Right.
So our ideas of ownership have evolved over the last 200, 300, 400 years. They're going to have to keep evolving again.
Interesting. So I was talking to one of my coworkers who's a brilliant programmer, and he's writes a lot of programs that are used by artists. But he was thinking about, it's like, well, while you're there, ask him what he thinks about code, like code that's being written because there's a lot of co-pilots and things like that. A lot of people are using this. So if you write some code and then you use an AI system to help you write some of the code, and then you create a program, can you patent that program even though it was written by another system?
So from I don't do a whole lot in the coding and computer space per se,
Sure.
but from my understanding, coding is protected by copyright law. So you wouldn't have to secure a patent over the code per se. You secure a patent over whatever the final software or product or whatever it is. But the code itself can qualify for copyright protection. And again, I don't think it's that dissimilar from taking an image off of Midjourney, changing one or two aspects of the code, and claiming it to be your own original work. What is protected is going to be part of your own, of that, whatever you've added as the creativity. But it's still something that you created.
Right.
I'm inclined to lean towards if you made it, regardless, with a computer, with a monkey, whatever, you should own it. But that ownership protection only extends as far as you owning kind of that specific thing.
Sure.
If I make an image of a spaceship, I own that one spaceship. And if someone makes something similar, there's only a couple handful of ways to draw a spaceship.
Right. Gotcha. Okay, so let's do a hypothetical. Let's say, for example, the courts do find that specific ways of gathering some of these models, such as Midjourney or say Stable Diffusion, is more specifically what I want to work with in this example. But let's say that they say, nope, images created with that system are not necessarily something that you can copyright because of we've decided some legal precedents or whatever it is. Now, Stable Diffusion itself is an open source system that a lot of other programs are incorporating into their program. So people are adding them to Blender, people are adding them to other programs like that. Would the fact that Stable Diffusion itself has been said you can't copyright that, would that extend to anyone that uses it in other programs?
That's a great question. And again, I don't know that there's an answer for it, at least in terms of the law right now.
Okay.
To me, it is going to create a nightmare of potential litigation if everyone has little individual bits of code and they're all being used across many different apps generated by this one thing. The valuation of that protection is going to go down. And
Right.
also kind of the user license agreement that you sign up on and using the software or whatever you sign on to log into whatever AI system you're using, that also is going to have some terms and conditions in place that tells you what you can and cannot do with the final product. And if I was a smart AI generating algorithm, I would have lines of text in the signing up or the registering saying that we own a part of copyright for anything that you create. Now, I don't know how enforceable that is. Again, I think this is all kind of remains to be seen in how it transpires in actual litigation.
So it sounds to me that we're in for a very interesting times for legal reasons that are going to be that it's going to be really hard to define who owns what anymore in those areas, right?
I think that this kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier about the evolution of the idea of copyright or intellectual property protection. The United States has a very specific worldview as it relates to IP ownership. Other countries and cultures throughout time and history haven't necessarily shared those same views. So when we have a million, I don't know, Little Red Riding Hood apps. I don't know. I'm trying to come up with some sort of good hypothetical, but I can't think of one.
Right. No, I get it. I think there is a what was there was an analogy that someone gave that, because there's so much stuff happening right now in AI. They were saying this is kind of reminds them of the early days of the Apple App Store when people started realizing they're going to make money on this, and it was like a gold rush. And then all you got was like, 400 fart apps,
Yep.
And then it wasn't until someone made like the Ubers or the real useful things that is that like, oh, that's what it's all about. So
that's the thing about AI, right? And even with ChatGPT, it only, I think, goes up to like 2021 or 2022 or something like that. The machines are only as smart as we allow them to be. It's only what we teach them to do.
Sure.
And something like storytelling, I feel like is a little bit more at risk of being kind of like, how do you say, taken over by AI, because storytelling as a medium has changed. We've gone from tablets, clay, photos, moving images, AR, VR, like the medium of it's changed, but the act of storytelling itself, the hero's journey, that hasn't really evolved a whole lot over the last 4,000 years. The hero's journey is still just as beloved today as it was, in Gilgamesh time. But music, on the other hand, because it's like everyone is trying to get that new sound and trying to create something that no one has ever heard before. Music is a little bit different from storytelling, in my opinion, and I think that music has a lot more room to grow outside of AI than necessarily storytelling does. I think there's a lot more practical applications to using AI for storytelling than maybe there will be for creating new music in the future.
Interesting. I find it fascinating that, obviously the thing about AI or specifically generative AI, such as ChatGPT, is that it's every word, the way it does it, it just predicts what the next word should be, right? So it's always predicting. So it's giving you, by definition, the most predictable result, right? Which, in a sense, I feel that over the last few decades, we have gotten the most predictable films possible. They are not very creative in some ways. So, but I'm curious to see if this is going to loosen the pickle jar of creativity in some ways, and we're going to start to get more interesting, diverse ideas from these tools.
See, I think it will, only because now, like I said, with the democratization of creativity, little guys like me and little content creators can start really exploring their ideas in a meaningful way and start getting them out there. And so if the big content creators want to keep up with that, they're going to have to find a way to indoctrinate and use that as well, if that makes sense. I'm thinking more of like when the internet first came out and when YouTube first came on the scene, and there was just, all of the creators and all of the videos that came up in the like kind of the OG wave of YouTube. A lot of them now are the creators that we watch.
Right.
Like Rick and Morty started off as a junky YouTube online program stuff.
Sure.
I'm remembering like the old Adult Swim shows and stuff. Even going back to what was it? Remember the Ben Stiller show? The Ben Stiller show on MTV. That was before the internet and before kind of the viralness of things, but it was that kind of grassroots outlet that allowed Ben Stiller to get to where he is today. So I think that the democratization of creativity, the lowering costs and the lower barrier of entry for people to come into the market is going to have to make everyone get more creative.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's interesting. I do think that the cautionary tale that you tell your students of, don't just rely on it right away. There is a history that you need to get through to get to is the important part of it. I find it interesting that you also see like, hey, this is here to stay, so you might as well learn how that works as well.
Yeah. I really think that there's no putting the genie back in the bottle on this one, and we have to find a way to live with it and survive with it. Otherwise, we're going to fail.
Yeah. Okay, it's going to seem like a little bit of a tangent, but it's not, because it is still AI related. So one of my other big interests that I have is actually digital humans. I've been doing digital human work for a long time. I worked in the visual effects world for a long time, so I did a lot of interesting films that way. But owning your likeness is also a big, interesting thing. So I worked on a Tom Cruise film where we had a digital scan of him because we had to make scenes where he ended up fighting himself. And the data set that was highly, 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 clamped down and was removed from our system the minute the movie was done, because I can imagine someone like Tom Cruise doesn't want to have his digital likeness, especially at that high fidelity, sort of roaming all over the place. But for me, with the advent of what deepfakes are, there's been a lot of people, especially in SAG, who have concerns about the copywriter owning themselves. And so this is a little bit of a long story, but I'm going to get to where I'm going. So I ran into a company called Metaphysics AI, and what they do some very, very good deepfakes and very high quality deepfakes. And what's been interesting that they sort of showcased is that they have a lot of people that are celebrities themselves that are getting themselves scanned through Metaphysics, and then creating a video of themselves with a deep fake of themselves on themselves, and then taking that and then copywriting that because they can't necessarily copyright themselves, but they can copyright the likeness of themselves that's been done through a deep fake. What are your thoughts on that?
Oh, goodness. The second part of it kind of seems down a proverbial rabbit hole, and I don't know that they're getting the kind of protections that they want. I would have to stop and think about that. But they
have a lot of lawyers looking into this too, but I'm just
okay. Yeah,
I'm curious.
Going back to your Tom Cruise question, if I'm Tom Cruise right now, yeah, I'm worried and kind of like have considerations about people using deep fakes and repurposing my likeness. But what I'm really thinking about is 20 to 30 years after I'm dead, how can I sell my likeness again to another studio, such which my estate just keeps making money, and we're going to go all see Mission Impossible 22 in the year 2055, right?
Right.
That's actually how I think things will go down more likely, is that people with high profile celebrityness, the Kim Kardashians, the Tom Cruises, the Will Smiths of the world, they're going to quickly sell their digital likeness to the highest bidder. And Disney, you're going to own Will Smith for the next 20 to 50 years, and you can put him in movies over that license period. And my kids and my grandkids are going to be watching a Fresh Prince 3.0 in 2025. I see that being more of where things are going than the average, or how do I say? There is a concern that people will take deep fakes and try to, like the Barack Obama or the Donald Trump, and try to get things out there and try to misappropriate them and get people to believe that people are saying things like that. The information age is too fast and too quick, and I feel like most of that stuff will, they might create problems in like the short, like maybe 24, 48 hours news sensation, news bubbles, news of the week type thing.
Sure.
But really, it's the mom next door who's driving her kids to soccer practice that's got creepy next door neighbor that then who wants to decide to make a deep fake porn of her for their own personal enjoyment. And for that, I don't see the average person being able to go out and hire a firm like you're talking about to analyze and recreate and copyright their likeness. I think we're just going to need statutory legal protection. We're going to need protection. We're going to need protection at the federal level. Because this is something that I talk about to my classes too. If I create AI Drake or I create AI Ice Cube, and I say, you know what? I got AI Drake, and he's got the best AI Drake version of a song, sound alike. It's not Drake, 100% not Drake. I'm telling you right now, it's not Drake. It's AI Drake sound alike. Can Drake sue? Is it fraud? Are you being misrepresentative? Because usually fraud, misrepresentation, and other business towards business crimes require an element of facetiousness, require an element of like, I am trying to fool the consumer. If I say this is AI Drake and this is not Drake, but this is the AI Drake song and it's really, really good, Drake doesn't have as much recourse. He has like,
it's like a Drake cover band.
It's a Drake cover band. It's a cover band. It's a parody. If it sounds good, sorry for Drake.
Right. Interesting. I do think, let's go back to that Tom Cruise analysis that we were talking about. Yes, selling your likeness later is good, but wouldn't you want to have your likeness now so that someone else can't because someone else can say, I have the best Tom Cruise deep fake and it's not owned by Tom Cruise, so you can use that one instead and it's cheaper.
I yes, but like if you're going to do that to somebody like Tom Cruise or Will Smith, they're going to bury you in lawsuits so much. Sure. Again, I see these being problems for like I could see this being a problem as it relates to North Korea in us or China in us and external threats or anarchists or people posting online and trying to cause short-term commotion and chaos. But anyone that tries to really monetize or make profit off of, a Tom Cruise lookalike AI, outside of, I think there's an actor right now that's kind of doing it on TikTok kind of openly, right?
Yeah, so that's the company that's behind Metaphysics that I was telling you about.
And so again, are they being fraudulent if they're upfront and straight about being, hey, this isn't Tom Cruise, but it's a Tom Cruise lookalike? Right. And or what's stopping a movie studio from going out and finding someone who looks like Tom Cruise and putting him in another movie?
Right.
It's going to be something that requires outside legislation, outside laws that are put into effect. I don't think that there's anything within the law currently outside California misappropriation laws that are state. I don't know that there's a lot of recourse at any legal level at this time.
Okay.
or a way to shoehorn it into a legal argument, especially if you're just being outright that you're not committing fraud. We're not trying to fool anybody. This isn't Tom Cruise, but it sure damn looks like him, and he can do just.
They call him deep fake Tom Cruise, right?
Deepfake Tom Cruise, right? So this isn't Tom Cruise, but it's the deepfake version. I don't know if you're committing fraud because you're not, essentially explicitly showing an element to deceive. It's the Donald Trump argument. If I don't know what I'm doing, then it's not really wrong.
Okay. All right. I do want to, I'm going to take a little bit of as we're wrapping up here, a little break from the AI conversation. I do want to talk about how entertainment is changing. Entertainment is changing a great deal. And you started to hint at that when you're talking about TikTok, et cetera. So do you feel that there's, obviously streaming was disruptive in Hollywood, but do you feel that people are underestimating the power of TikTok and of Twitch and of other streaming platforms that are going to take more screen time, especially in the younger generation?
So with 8 billion people on the planet, I'm inclined to think that there's an audience for everything, just about. Sure. And as a content consumer myself, I see my content trends. Like, yeah, I spend more time on YouTube and TikTok and stuff, but I'm still prioritizing an hour or two out of my day to watch a film or watch a TV show, something that I want to watch. I'm still prioritizing going to the movies once a month to go see the next Star Wars or Marvel or whatever it is. I don't think that those consumer habits are going to change. It's the day-to-day consumption habits in trying to attract ears and eyeballs between 9 a.m. and 5 p.m. that's going to be the real challenge. And I don't know that, Hollywood or television kind of plays between 9 and 5, but that's not their primary time for viewer consumption, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I agree. And how does that fit? I mean, obviously there is a lot more YouTube, right? We are, 20 years ago, we weren't watching that much YouTube, and now we're watching a lot more YouTube. In fact, there's been an argument that more YouTube is being consumed than any other network individually.
It's true. It's true. As a consumer, I look at my phone every day, and I watch 2 to 3 hours of YouTube, and I'll watch 1 hour of Netflix, sorry, 1 hour of traditional content, and then that is broken up between maybe one night it's Netflix, the next night it's HBO Max, the next night it's Disney. So from that angle, the how many players are in the game to try to get that 1 or 2 hours of let's call it long form content space, it's becoming more challenging to get your thing watched, which is actually opening up, hopefully what I want to see is more distribution outlets for niche content. I don't know how much you follow with like OnlyFans or stuff like that, but a lot of comedians are finding that those secondary platforms are a way to kind of get past the proverbial woke censors or whatever and start getting back to content that might be a little bit more edgy and a little less PC and a little bit more experimental. So I'm inclined to believe that if you put it out there, there's going to be a market for it and people are going to find it. But yeah, Netflix, Amazon, Hulu, Disney, they're going to have to step up their games to continue to appeal to the mass consumers because their consumption habits are changing.
That's very interesting. But as a lawyer, and especially in at the beginning of the podcast, you tell me all the things you do. Have you seen huge changes in how content is created on platforms like YouTube? Like the production values and the cost of production seems to have gone up, or maybe not, or maybe people are just getting better at it without all the cost.
People are specializing in it, and it's becoming I tried to do a series of TikTok reels for my law firm the other day, and filming that style of content is very different from filming TV or long form feature film content. It's just brought in more people and given people ability to specialize in more things. I was talking with a YouTube content creator the other day, and the way that he makes his content is very different from the way my producers make TV and film. So it's kind of just allowed more people to come to the table and again, be players.
Yeah. But I mean, I think, for example, the one that comes to mind is like people like Mark Rober, on YouTube is, I mean, he puts something out and it gets 8 million views within the first hour, but it is high value, right? There is a lot of production, and it's kind of interesting to see that like that was not possible on YouTube 20 years ago.
But I don't think that it's necessary and vital to the YouTube success. There was a point in time, maybe 2017, 2018, when YouTube had the idea that they were going to start to take celebrities and try to build them out channels around themselves, Brie Larson and stuff, and put a lot of production value into those YouTube channels, and they didn't do very well. So it's not necessarily about the how much money is on screen. Hot Ones has great production quality, but it probably doesn't have the biggest budget in the world.
No, I bet you it's really small. I bet you it's just a black sheet behind them and a couple of lights.
But it's a good show. Everyone loves it. Why? Because people love watching people eat, and people love watching, celebrities talk about gossip. So for me, as being, someone who was born in the 80s, was really into TV in the 90s, was in college in the 2000s, and have watched how all this kind of ebbed and flowed and changed, I'm thinking we're going to go back to we're going to find the new version of Jerry Springer. We're going to find the new version of Ricky Lake. We're going to find resurgences of these trends in a new media consumption style, a la Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat, etc. But what people want to see kind of remains the same over time.
Right. And I know you do represent influencers as well on your right. And so how different is representing an influencer versus traditional Hollywood talent?
Yeah, traditional Hollywood talent, I'll say there's more of a gentleman's agreement. We're all kind of playing in the same industry, and it's a very repeat game. The players are constant repeat over and over again. And if you step on the toes of one talent, you might be stepping on the toes of his spouse or his or her, whatever. And that it might cause a ripple effect. And you don't want that in the industry. So there's a little bit more of a gentleman's game in terms of how we conduct negotiations, how we conduct contracts. With influencers, it's the wild, wild west. And brands will explode, overnight and disappear overnight. So if I'm trying to get money for my influencer talent, I'm much more concerned about collecting and timing of payments and making sure that the other side is honoring their obligations of the contract more than I am with a Paramount or a Warner Brothers or a Disney, where it's like, they do try to, screw the little guy a little bit, but we can usually rely on them to eventually do the right thing through the pressures of this is just a small town. Hollywood is a much smaller town than the giant influencer brand and advertising world.
That's interesting to say as well. Okay, one last question for you. I mean, obviously the streaming world has actually been slightly disrupted too. I mean, we've seen Netflix itself sort of scale back, and then once they, put the throttle back, everyone pumped the brakes, and it became, all of a sudden production went down 25% in 2023, just from that little hiccup.
Don't I know it?
Yeah, I'm sure. Which is interesting in itself. What has been rumored around here is that the FAST networks, which are free advertising supported television, such as Pluto and Tubi and things like that, are going to start to have more influence because that's going to be a more reliable way of getting income on your systems. What are your thoughts on how that's going to be?
Yeah. So I'll answer that question by asking another question. Why are the fast channels more viable in terms of let's just call it profitability or revenue driving and or getting stuff on screen? The answer is because they've invited back the advertisers. Television was built on advertising revenue. The Colgate Variety Hour was really, it was that kind of amalgamation between brands and products and television networks and broadcasters that allowed for the proliferation of television throughout the aughts and stuff. And once Netflix said, hey, we're kicking out the advertisers, they had to completely start fronting that budget themselves. Back in the day, if a TV show was made, it was basically funded 50% by the network, and they got their revenue from the advertisers and 50% by the studio. So there's kind of a sharing of the burden, if you will. Now it's all on Netflix, and if they don't make or recoup or sell more subscriptions to make that money back, they're not selling additional ad space to kind of pat themselves on the back and keep up overhead, right? Tubi, Freeform, these other channels, they're bringing in the advertisers and they're getting the money to put things on screen and to keep themselves afloat and maybe have things run more seasons and see what is actually more popular, and have like the meritocracy of content win out. Netflix has great shows, but they'll cancel them in a heartbeat, even if they are wildly popular, because they're just too expensive to keep making.
Right. It's interesting. Well, I find this fascinating. And we've gone over an hour. I'm sure there's going to be more questions. Once we put this out there, I'm going to try to see if some of our listeners have more questions, and maybe we'll have our every couple months we'll have legal chats with Joshua. Yeah. What do you think? If that sounds good to you, I'd love to have that.
I would love to be back again. This is really great, and this is the intersection of everything that I love: entertainment, storytelling, tech, business. So really cool.
All right. Well, thank you so much for doing this, and hopefully we'll have you back soon.
Chris, listeners, thank you so much. Look us up on Instagram at Lastine Law, or find us on the website at LastineEntertainmentLaw.com.
Yeah, great. A good plug. We'll make sure, and all of that will be on our show notes as well. So you just go to the episode page, and we'll have links for everyone there. All right. Well, thank you.
Thank you, Chris.